To my understanding is the owner hired a contractor that was not a licensed demolition contractor. In order to wreck a property in the city of Detroit, you must be licensed.
Licensed demolition contractors generally carry specialized insurance. They understand hazardous material regulations. They know notification requirements. They understand worker safety, equipment safety, dust suppression, emergency procedures, documentation, chain of custody for certain materials. They're professionals in that specific field. Demolishing a structure isn't the same as remodeling a kitchen. Man, this is crazy. When a building is demolished, especially an older one, water is specifically used to suppress dust. Why is that? Because dust actually may contain hazardous materials. Detroit has thousands of homes built before 1978, and that matters because lead-based paint was commonly used on older properties. Many older homes also contain asbestos insulation, pipe wrap, floor tiles, roofing materials, siding. Asbestos isn't dangerous when it's left undisturbed, but once it's crushed, broken apart, it becomes airborne. Those microscopic fibers can be inhaled. That's why demolition isn't just about knocking something over. It's really an environmental control operation. You're managing risk, not just removing a building. Imagine buying a rundown house, one that everybody agrees is in terrible condition. Roof is collapsing, windows are broken, the porch is hanging on by a prayer. You think to yourself, I'll just knock it down, start fresh. Everybody's going to thank me, right? Seems simple enough until you discover that demolishing a building can actually be more complex than building one, because that old house might contain asbestos. It might have active gas lines. It might have electrical service. It might share utilities with neighboring properties. It might even contain lead, right? And if you tear it down the wrong way, you aren't just creating a mess. You're putting an entire neighborhood at risk. That's exactly what happened here in a Detroit neighborhood where a property purchased from the Detroit Land Bank was allegedly demolished without permits, without a licensed demolition contractor, and according to neighbors, without many of the safety precautions that normally protect surrounding residents. But I actually think this story is about something much bigger than an illegal demolition. It's about what happens after cities sell thousands of vacant properties. It's about the responsibilities that come with ownership. It's about neighborhood accountability, and it's about why redevelopment isn't nearly as simple as people think. And as somebody who's gone through permitting, construction, environmental reviews, utility coordination, city inspections, development financing, I can tell you firsthand, there's a reason why these processes exist. And yes, are they frustrating? Absolutely at times. But stories like the one we're covering today remind us of why many of those requirements exist in the first place. Let's check it out.
All right, so right now, some neighbors on Detroit's west side are speaking out about this property right here and about a land bank property that was purchased and recently demolished without getting proper permits. It's a situation that's causing a bit of controversy over in the Midwest Tireman community, and those neighbors contacting Local 4 said they don't want to see a similar situation or illegal demolition like this happening again. They say they're among the eyes and ears of Detroit's Midwest Tireman community.
We try to be. Yeah.
These three women, Anita Starks, Anita Martin, and Rushan Long, staying on top of issues for families calling this neighborhood home.
We've been active in our community. For years, we've been active.
And it's what happened here on this now empty lot at 7727 Brighton back in June that has them concerned.
Now, one thing I really appreciate here is how engaged these neighbors actually are, right? People sometimes roll their eyes when neighbors pay attention to what's happening on their block. But honestly, cities need that, especially Detroit. Detroit has nearly 140 square miles of land. There is no realistic scenario where city inspectors can monitor every renovation, every roof replacement, every demolition, every day, right? Neighborhood residents become the first line of observation, not to stop development, but to make sure development happens responsibly. That's actually one of the underrated ingredients of healthy neighborhoods, people who care enough to notice.
I saw three men working. They had a big dumpster in the front.
This is the house that once stood at 7727 Brighton. Detroit Land Bank sold the property back in March, and according to the city's construction and demolition department, the new property owner demolished the place without any permits.
They didn't have no water. Debris is flying. They should have some precautions. That's why I knew it wasn't the city.
The neighbors say when they saw the demolition in action on June 16th, they immediately began taking photos and contacting various city staffers, hoping to get the demo crew caught and stopped in real time. The women say they were worried.
Asbestos, fluids, the gas line. What if something would have blew up?
Man, this is crazy. When a building is demolished, especially an older one, water is specifically used to suppress dust. Why is that? Because dust actually may contain hazardous materials. Detroit has thousands of homes built before 1978, and that matters because lead-based paint was commonly used on older properties. Many older homes also contain asbestos insulation, pipe wrap, floor tiles, roofing materials, siding. Asbestos isn't dangerous when it's left undisturbed, but once it's crushed, broken apart, it becomes airborne. Those microscopic fibers can be inhaled. That's why demolition isn't just about knocking something over. It's really an environmental control operation. You're managing risk, not just removing a building. Now, when it comes to the gas line or utilities in general, I don't think people understand or appreciate just how interconnected city infrastructure really is. When developers or investors prep for demolition, one of the very first steps is coordinating utility disconnects. Gas, electric, water, sewer, communications. Sometimes utilities that appear abandoned aren't actually abandoned at all. Sometimes neighboring buildings share infrastructure in very unexpected ways. Sometimes records don't match field conditions. I've been a part of projects where locating utilities became its own multi-week exercise because maps aren't always perfect. Misdig makes mistakes. And that's even before excavation even begins. Imagine accidentally striking an active gas line or damaging a water main. Now you're going from removing one vacant house to affecting dozens, if not hundreds of nearby residents. That's why these utility clearances happen before demolition, not afterward. Good developers typically don't want shortcuts. We want predictability. We want permits. We want inspections. We want licensed contractors because if something goes wrong, we're ultimately responsible. The cheapest contractor isn't always the least expensive contractor. Sometimes they're the most expensive decision you'll ever make, right? Saving $10,000 today can create a $200,000 problem tomorrow, or worse. Someone gets hurt, or worse.
The next day, city inspectors showed up, but it was too late. With the house already knocked down, inspectors red tagged the debris.
To my understanding is the owner hired a contractor that was not a licensed demolition contractor. In order to wreck a property in the city of Detroit, you must be licensed.
Licensed demolition contractors generally carry specialized insurance. They understand hazardous material regulations. They know notification requirements. They understand worker safety, equipment safety, dust suppression, emergency procedures, documentation, chain of custody for certain materials. They're professionals in that specific field. Demolishing a structure isn't the same as remodeling a kitchen.
Days later, the Construction and Demolition Department received the emergency order and the gas lines were turned off. And on July 10th, contractors were called in to remove the remaining debris and clean things up.
You mean to tell me my tax dollars went down there and had to clean that mess up?
These neighbors are now speaking out, asking city leaders about accountability.
It's mind-boggling that people can come in, buy these properties, and do whatever without any oversight.
Now, that question about our taxpayer dollars being used to clean up the debris, that's another important conversation. Let's talk about externalities. If somebody creates a problem, but society pays to clean it up, the true cost wasn't actually paid by the person making the decision. Economists call this an externalized cost. It's the same reason illegal dumping frustrates cities, or abandoned construction sites, or neglected commercial buildings. Eventually, someone else pays, usually taxpayers. That's why enforcement matters, because the public shouldn't consistently absorb private mistakes. But Detroit faces a unique balancing act, right? On one hand, we desperately need more investment, more renovations, more redevelopment, more people buying vacant property. And on the other hand, investment has to be responsible, right? We've already spent decades trying to recover from irresponsible ownership. The goal isn't simply more development, it's better development. That's true whether we're talking about a $5,000 side lot or a $100 million mixed-use project. The principles are the same. Good planning, qualified professionals, community engagement, long-term stewardship.
As for the property owner, he's not off the hook about what happened here.
We've also issued, I think, close to $3,000 in tickets against the property owner because of them not abiding by the rules of the city of Detroit.
And I also reached out to Detroit Land Bank Authority. A spokeswoman there tells us the property owner was not allowed to demolish the house based on their contract with the land bank. Now, due to that breach of contract, the land bank is taking steps to get that property turned back over to the organization. Now, if you notice a demolition happening without permits, you can report that to Detroit BSeed at 313-224-3202. And I'll have all of that information for you under this story on clickondetroit.com.
Now, let's broaden this discussion a bit. Detroit's land bank exists because thousands upon thousands of properties were abandoned. For decades, vacancy became one of the city's biggest challenges. Entire neighborhoods experienced disinvestment, tax foreclosure, population decline, speculation, arson, demolition, right? The land bank became a mechanism to move those vacant properties back into productive private ownership. That's the goal. But selling the property is only the beginning, right? Not the finish line. Ownership comes with obligations, maintenance, taxes, code compliance, insurance, safety, and often specific contractual requirements depending on how the property was acquired. The city of Detroit, and more specifically the Detroit Land Bank, they're not just selling houses, they're trying to create responsible ownership. The Detroit Land Bank puts in place certain requirements that if you don't abide by, the land bank has the right, per the contract that you signed, to take back ownership of, say, a property. And it sounds like that's what's happening in this case. But why would somebody bypass permits in the first place, right? Was it ignorance? Was it cost? Was it delays? Was it intentional? Was it misinformation, right? Those answers matter, because if hundreds of people begin to make the same decision, that's usually pointing towards a larger systematic issue. Maybe enforcement needs improvement. Maybe education needs improvement. Maybe permitting timelines need improvement. Maybe penalties need improvement, or maybe all four, right? Good public policy isn't about assigning blame. It's about reducing the chances that the same mistake happens again. One thing development has taught me is that almost everything takes longer than you'd expect. You coordinate architects, engineers, environmental consultants, utilities, lenders, city departments, contractors, right? Sometimes one permit holds up everything else. It could be frustrating, believe me, I've lived it, but every one of those steps exists because somebody somewhere made a costly mistake years ago. Building codes, fire codes, environmental regulations, inspection requirements, they're often written in response to real disasters, not hypothetical ones. Owning real estate isn't just about having rights, it's about accepting responsibilities. A vacant property isn't just another asset on a spreadsheet, it's a part of someone's neighborhood. Someone walks by this property every day. Someone lives next door. Someone raises children nearby. Every demolition, every renovation, every new building changes the physical environment that people call home. That's why development deserves to be done thoughtfully. Not because regulations say so, but because communities deserve it. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Thanks for listening to me ramble. I'll see you in the next video.